All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the Awesemo.com NHL DFS strategy show. We've got another really fun day of hockey, if you're just a hockey fan, and then NHL DFS as well. Even though the contests aren't massive, they're still more than enough to get us out of bed and talk some NHL DFS. So we're going to do all the normal stuff we do, lineup study, go through each game, and talk about some of our favorite plays, possible line changes, stuff you need to be aware of as the day goes on. Because as we know, the work in NHL DFS these days does not stop when the slate locks. So it's going to be a lot of late swap opportunities. Hopefully, you had some success last night. As you can see, I'm joined by Slim Cliffy. What's up, man?
Oh, nothing. We were just talking. This might be the best NHL day of the entire season. We've got 6 elimination games, which, you think the normal playoff days in normal seasons, we might get 5 games in one day in normal times, let alone, 5 elimination games, let alone 6 elimination games. So, I'm super stoked for just this whole slate of games, like from a DFS perspective, but just from a fan's perspective, this is a great day of hockey.
Yeah, should be good. And especially if we get a couple of the teams that are on the brink of elimination. If they're down late, you might see some fireworks late in the game. You might see a
Like,
goalie pulled at
Yeah,
10
that's
minutes. I
like
don't know.
the goalie polls were the big thing I was thinking about. Was like, if a team's down 6-2, you're gonna see a goalie poll with like 5 or 6 minutes left or something like that. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet. I myself, just from like, I usually don't care about the actual outcomes of the games. I just want my DFS teams to do well and it to be good hockey. But I want a bunch of game fives. So I'm rooting for any team that's down 2-1. Go Preds, go Penguins, go Leafs, Oilers. I want all these teams to be playing one more game. This has been a lot of fun. Um, let's look at last night. Actually, let's talk about SuperDraft really quick. Had another decent night over on SuperDraft last night. It's been fun playing. Like, everybody just plays the studs, and there's something to be said for that. Throw a couple studs in your lineup, the McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane guys, but you're really rewarded playing NHL on SuperDraft by playing the 1.5, 1.6x multiplier guys. The tournaments have been pretty soft. They haven't been filling up. So let's fill it up for SuperDraft today. Use promo code Awesemo10 on your first deposit of $20 or more, and you get $10 in free SuperDraft cash. It's $10 to maybe enter the barn burner today. $300 in total they are offering up, and then if you want to deposit a little bit more, $100 or more, you get $20 of free SuperDraft cash. So go support them. They are supporting us, and it's just kind of a new game, and it's a little bit different than the salary cap. So go try that out. We still have promo code NHL is back. That expires today, actually. Today is August 7th already. So that's going to be it. That will give you $20 for 31 days of Awesemo's projections, ownership projections, top stacks, and everything else that's premium, including premium Slack chat, which has been very valuable. And then we'll talk about some fantasy football stuff we've got going on today. I'm sure you guys have seen the tabs on the homepage of Awesemo.com. So a bunch of fantasy football stuff as well. We'll get to that a little bit later. Lineup study from last night pulled up. I've got the $10 up on the screen. Familiar name, Testosterone. Took it down top 2 spots, actually. So not just first place, took down 10K for first, and then followed it up with 4K for second. The even strength stacks were the key, as well as the D-men here. So 37.2 out of Pareko. I think DK gave him a hat trick at one point, and so I thought he scored 2 quick goals, but he only got the 2. I think he had 3 total points, a bunch of shots on goal, a bunch of blocks. And then Seth Jones, 22.5 DK points. Nothing flashy here from Testosterone, but it did work out last night. 2 obviously unique lineups that took down the top 2 spots. One was a Calgary 1, Columbus 1 stack. One was a Columbus 1, Vancouver 1, I guess you would call it. The Pedersen line, even with the JT Miller 0, still put up 213 points. Kind of wild. I ended up getting a top 5 score in this tournament, but as you can see there, lost some money, didn't cash enough lineups. Fifth is kind of no man's land, but at least I got most of my money back here despite not cashing most of my lineups. You had a pretty tilting night. You want to tell the people about that?
Yeah, it was just one of those nights where, um, the thing that puts you over the top in a lot of GPPs. Obviously, you need the monster scores from your forwards, but you need, like, if you're going with cheap defensemen, you usually need to hit on them. Um, I got Travis Sanheim last night. I got the shutout from Markstrom in a bunch of lineups. I had a fair bit of the Columbus one with Werenski, but everything was paired with either the Minnesota top line or the Philly top line, and obviously those didn't pan out. So it's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes you have the right lineups with the right stacks, and sometimes you don't. You just got to keep putting yourself in the best position that you can and hope that the chips fall your way, and eventually they will.
Yeah, I've got your lineup pulled up. Nailed it on Dubois, Atkinson, both really solid scores. Werenski certainly didn't hurt your lineup with 16.8 points. Markstrom in net. Brock Besser scored a goal. It was just Philly one who ended up killing me as well. I had a bunch of them, and a 0 from Voracek. You avoided the 0 from JT Miller in this lineup, but the even strength stacks, like the low owned guys, Tessier and Scott Lawton, if you had Philadelphia too, those guys were king last night. So you got rewarded if you even strength stacked. If you tried to pick and choose, there were a couple duds seemingly on every team. So let's get into this. 5 games. We'll skip the first game. That one locks in, 17 minutes. So if you're playing Showdown or whatever, just be aware. 2.8 implied total for the Predators, 2.7 for the Coyotes. This will be the first game of the slate. Locks at 2:30 Eastern. FanDuel and DraftKings are linked up again, so should be a busy lock time if you're trying to play on multiple sites here. SuperDraft is a little bit later. Saros and Kemper is who we have in. Wouldn't expect any changes from Arizona. Probably going to be Saros again for the Preds, although we're not exactly sure. I'm not anticipating any lineup changes. Are you anticipating anything different here? And how are you approaching this game?
Yeah, as far as the even strength lines go, I'm assuming that it's going to be pretty much status quo for both sides. The one thing that I will note about lineups is Arizona had a couple power plays last game, and Jordan Osterley actually took the first one. Oliver Ekman-Larsson took the second one, but it was late in the game, like with like a couple minutes left or 3 minutes left or something like that. Now, I don't want to say Jordan Osterley is for sure going to run the top power play unit, but he did spend, a few games up there through the season. So, it's something that's at least in the minds of the coaching staff. He's a guy that I think usually grades out pretty well in our projections. He usually grades out well in mine. I don't, I'm not saying you have to go ahead and stuff in 30% Jordan Osterley or something like that, but just be mindful that he could get, some extra offensive exposure that we might not otherwise expect. For me, this game's, again, it's about Nashville 1. That the lines just looked incredible. The entire postseason, we talked about this, I think, on the very first show we did together for these playoffs. How good they were for years, and then they just had a really bad 2019-20 season. Their first few games here in these play-ins, they've looked of the team of a line of a couple years ago. I have a tough time getting away from them. I use a line matching tool from Adam Daly Fry, buddy of mine over at Daubrey. People can contact me if they want to subscribe there for line matching, but he has the second line of Stepan, Keller, and Garland matching up against Nashville's top line. Ooh. Now that's interesting to me because Garland's not a bad defensive player. I know people might think he's a little noted for his offense because he had over 20 goals there in the desert this year, but he's not bad defensively. But Derek Stepan isn't the guy that he was a few years ago, and Clayton Keller's not good defensively at all. So I think this is kind of a matchup that Nashville 1 could exploit. So I'm getting to about 20 to 25% Nashville 1. I'm staying away largely from Arizona. I do have like some one-off haul. I think I have 1 or 2 Osterleys in my lineups. But that's about it. Arizona just, they've really been riding Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper is my favorite play on the entire Arizona roster today. I think if this team wants to win today, he's going to have to put up close to another performance that he did in Game 3. So for me, from Arizona, again, it's just going to be a couple one-offs like Hall or Osterley, maybe Keller or something like that. But mostly it's going to be Kemper or Nashville 1 on the other side.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about the Arizona lines here. This one's all about Nashville 1. I think I agree there. They're coming up a little bit over-owned, but they're still super cheap. It opens up a ton with the rest of your roster. And like you can leave off Ryan Johansson if you just want to go Forsberg and Arvidsson or something like that if you're doing 3-2s or just two-man stacking or building a cash lineup. I think Forsberg was a pretty good option, just attempting a ton of shots in all these games. And then I don't think either line for Arizona, either of the top 6 or the top 2 lines can hold them. They haven't so far this series. So whoever they're getting matched up against, I think they're going to have a pretty strong advantage. And they're all correlated on the top power play. And they go with Yossi, which is a guy I love playing pretty much at any price. He hasn't been great so far, but he hasn't really gotten points too often. And so if he can somehow pull out a multi-point game here, he's a guy I love. He's my favorite defenseman on the slate. Once again, he'll be my highest exposed player, very likely. That's just how it goes.
I mean, he's your favorite defenseman on the slate, even if he's not on the slate.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just searching for his name on DK, trying to jam in as much as possible. So my heart skips a beat every time Yossi is actually on the slate and I can play him. I actually do like Ellis as well for 5,600. You guys are just playing massive minutes together, like 27, 28 minutes. I think they got up to last game. So both of those guys, fantastic options. More Ellis for one-offs. Like a low-owned one-off usually gets about half or a third of the ownership of Yossi when they're skating together just because he doesn't get the top power play time. Not really interested in other lines for Nashville. Maybe you could argue this Nashville 3 line as a super low-owned flyer. Maybe they can beat up on the Arizona depth. And then on the Arizona side, they're going to be popular because they're at home and like Hall and Kessel and Dvorak are cheap, but haven't been too impressed with what they've done at 5-on-5. So I'm probably going to be below the field on Arizona 1 and probably the same thing on Arizona 2, especially if we think they're going to go up against Nashville 1. That's a brutal matchup for them.
Yeah, that's the thing is I kind of like I think for our last Arizona Nashville pod or slate, whatever, we were on Arizona 2, but that's when Nashville was dictating the matchups and Arizona 2 was actually getting the Duchesne line. And I think that's the matchup that you want out of the 3 Nashville top 3 lines. But it doesn't look like it's going to be the case today. So that's what's getting me away from Arizona. I'm with you on Nashville 3, but I think I have a one-off Bonino and a one-off Smith. I'm not stacking the entire line, but Craig Smith is actually second on the team in shot attempts per minute these playoffs. So he's obviously a threat for the shot bonus, and he's cheap. So I don't mind Smith.
All right, let's go to. Oh, and I agree on Kemper as well. Like if you're not taking a lot from this game, I think it makes sense to have Kemper because he's just seeing a ton of volume and he's 7,400, and it is a winnable game for Arizona.
And it's a decent leverage play too, right? If Nashville ends up one of the highest owned teams on the slate, so
absolutely. Let's go to Pittsburgh and Montreal. Another elimination game. 3.1 implied total for the Penguins. Backs up against the wall. 2.5 for Montreal. Tristan Jarry and Carey Price are your likely starters. Jarry actually got confirmed. And then, I don't know. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh fans, their fears are coming to fruition here. They were all worried about having to face Price and Montreal when this format first got announced. And now they're down 2-1 here. I think you could argue they've been the better team if you look at like underlying numbers. I'm really interested in Pittsburgh, but I want to hear your take. What do you think happens here?
So the one thing I want to note is Montreal was a good 5-on-5 team this year. Okay. Like I know this team, they were the 24th place team going into the playoffs or whatever by points and all that. And they hadn't looked, very good for a very long time. But Montreal was, if I'm just looking at it now, not first in the league, sorry, second in the league in adjusted shot share and second in the league in expected goal share. And their actual goal share was, over 50%, which isn't great, but it was higher than other playoff teams like Columbus, Arizona, and Toronto. Like, this was a good 5-on-5 team this year. Their problem was Price was inconsistent at best, and the power play was awful. Now the power play is still awful, but Prices look pretty good for the most part. So that's why Pittsburgh's having all this trouble. Like, Montreal's not a pushover at even strength. I still think Pittsburgh wins this game, but I think we're going to see a higher scoring game, kind of like we saw in Game 3, as opposed to what we saw earlier in the series when they're scoring, just 2, 3, 4 goals a game or whatever. So I do have some Montreal too in this game, but I want to note the lineup changes that they had in their last game. Phil Deneau and Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, their 3 centers, all switched lines. So Gallagher and Tatar now have Nick Suzuki as their center, while Deneau went down to what I guess would be called the third line with Paul Byron and Arturi Lehkonen. So what I was kind of thinking is that Suzuki, Tatar, Gallagher, I like that line a lot. I think Suzuki is a very good player, but I also think Deneau is very underrated. And I think people are going to see Suzuki as some sort of huge upgrade on the Montreal top line, and I don't see it that way. I see him as basically the same player as Deneau. Like, I see him as identical players. Like, so I think Suzuki will obviously be a very good player and has a way higher ceiling 2, 3, 4 years down the road. But I'm just talking about right now, today. I don't think they're very dissimilar players. So whether it's Suzuki or whether it's Deneau, it really hasn't changed my opinion a whole lot. What has changed is Jesperi Kotkaniemi going to that second line with Drouin and Joel Armia. I ragged on Drouin in our last show, and then he went out and scored. And he actually did look good. Like, besides the goal, he seemed more engaged, like going into the corners and actually coming out with the puck, which he didn't do at all in the first couple contests. So, I don't want to say he's turned a corner because he's put up terrible results for years. But Kotkaniemi has been probably Montreal's best player of the entire series. If you look at his underlying stats through the playoffs, they've just been monstrous. And not only that, is that second line might see that third pairing from Pittsburgh quite a bit. And if we'll see if Jack Johnson's in the lineup again, but that Jack Johnson, Justin Schultz pairing has been like utterly atrocious. And the thing is they've been, sending them out at times with the third line of Pittsburgh. And the third line from Pittsburgh last game had Sam Lafferty and Patrick Marleau on it. Neither of those guys are NHLers anymore. And Jack Johnson is not an NHLer anymore. So now you have 3 out of 5 guys on the ice that shouldn't even be in the league, and they're in the playoffs. Like, this is why Montreal's depth is just running all over Pittsburgh, is because Pittsburgh's third line and Pittsburgh's third pair are disgustingly bad. So I do like Montreal's second line here. Kotkaniemi, Armia, Drouin, assuming that's the line that gets together. They switched everything up last game, and we won't get confirmation. I don't think we'll get confirmation. But I do like them because I think they're going to see a fair bit of that third pair from Pittsburgh, and they're just going to smash them.
Yeah, I think it's just important in this game, and you might be able to get unique line combos. It looks like the line sites still have these like normal Deneau, Tatar, Gallagher, Suzuki, Drouin, and Armia together, and then Kotkaniemi on the third line. But those guys could all be switched up if you wanted to in your Montreal, or like if you wanted to just run the same lines. I think that's okay because Suzuki and Deneau are both right next to each other in price, 38 and 3,700 on DK. So you won't have too tough of a time to swap. It's also the second game of the slate. So you're going to have options if you just want to blow up your lineup. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. You would get Suzuki top line and top power play, which would be appealing to a lot of people if he's with if he's with Gallagher and Tatar. If it is Deneau, Tatar, and Gallagher, like that would clearly go up against the Crosby line. But with Suzuki, would they and you may have mentioned this, and I might have missed it. With Suzuki up there with Tatar and Gallagher, would they still match Crosby, or would it be the Deneau line, whoever he's with?
I mean, that's kind of like the $1 million question, right? Because we
Mhm.
really only have like a half game sample to go off of. What I noticed, just looking through the shift chart, is that they kept Suzuki and Co up against Crosby a
Okay.
fair bit. So that's kind of the matchup that I would expect here in this game. And even in the shifts that they didn't go up against Crosby, they went up against Malkin. I think one way or another they're going to end up playing against the top
Hmm.
six. But it was the Byron Lehkonen Deneau line that was largely eating the Malkin minutes.
Interesting.
So yeah, so that's why I'm in on Kotkaniemi and Drouin and Armia, because if that line goes up against Marlowe and Lafferty and Jack Johnson, they're going to shred them.
Yeah.
So I'm not going hog wild. I think I have 20 lineups made, and I have that Montreal line in 2 of them. But I think having that will be 4 or 5 times over the field. So I'm more than fine with that.
Yeah, Montreal 3 won't be popular, and I'm not even confident people will have the correct combinations. Like, people just aren't swapping. They're not keeping up with it, whether they're at work or doing something else, or don't realize that you can find the line combinations for the most part right before the game starts. So just take advantage of that and just try to get in the right guys, try to get the centers in the correct spots here, because they could be on the move like they were last game, and they did end up winning that game. So it's fairly likely that they just stick with what brought them back from the dead last game.
I
Uh,
mean, how do you make a comeback in the playoffs after changing your
yeah,
line and then go back to what you were losing with?
right.
And the thing is, even for some reason, if they go down 1-0, I can see them switching 10 minutes into the
Hmm.
first period. So
Yeah, for sure.
like I'm going with the new lineup.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't talked about Pitt too much. I think there's a lot of intrigue on the Montreal side, regardless of what they do, and I'm right there with it. Specifically, the 2 lines you mentioned. Well, actually, I think the 3 lines are all in play for Montreal, and then you got 2 really good lines for Pittsburgh plus the power play. I think one of my predictions for this series was that Pittsburgh was just going to hand it to Montreal one game if they could get it going on the power play. They haven't really been able to do that yet. Maybe this is the game, and they even up the series here. But I like both of the top 2 lines for Pitt. The ownership isn't out of control on either one of them. If you look at our top stacks tool, Pittsburgh doesn't like either line. Is like just over 10%. Pitt 1 we have it just over 10% total ownership share. And Sheary might even be less owned than that. So I love Pittsburgh 1. They've been generating a lot of chances. Pittsburgh 2 has been generating a lot of chances. So I like the even strength stacks. And then I am gonna have I have to have some Pittsburgh full power play stacks here, at least 4-man with Letang. Letang doesn't grade out exceptionally for us, but 6,300. If you're power play stacking, you can't really leave that off. So I think we're getting good prices and good ownership on Pitt. Maybe people are down on them, but I'm definitely not for this slate.
Yeah, I'm not in so much on the even strength lines, because now that Montreal dictates the matchups, I'm thinking that it's going to be a little bit tougher. I mean,
Sure.
Pittsburgh still put up a handful of goals last game, so it's not like they can't. But I'm focusing more on the power play. I think all my Pittsburgh stacks are some mix of power play stacks, just because I agree with you. Like, I fully expected there to be one game this series where Pittsburgh just goes out and demolishes them like 6-1 or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, with 3 power play goals or 4 power play goals or something. So, not saying it's going to happen in this game, but that's kind of but I think Pittsburgh's best chance of success is through the power play, because I do think Montreal, dictating their own matchups at 5-on-5, presents a pretty big problem for them.
Yeah, this game is gonna be fun. This is one of the ones I'm looking forward to, because you've got Pittsburgh, who should be the better team, but Montreal, like you said, is a good 5-on-5 team, and like they have been all season. They just had real issues, not at 5-on-5. So we'll see here. You've got Weber. I mentioned Letang. Are you still on Marino? And then what are you doing with like Petrie and any of these other cheap guys?
Yeah, Petrie is the guy for me. I just find he's just way too cheap at
Mm-hmm.
4,200. Like, I haven't gone through my old salary logs, but I remember loads of games where Petrie was well over 5K, like
For sure.
54, 55, 5,600. And with the minutes he's playing, I don't see any reason for him to be down to 4,200 last night or this slate. So like Petrie for me is 100% the guy that I'm in on. I'm still in on him on Marino for Pittsburgh. The one thing I want to note about Pittsburgh is Justin Schultz has actually been jumping onto the power play with them at times. You notice that, it's been Patrick Hornfist or, they've been rotating a couple different forwards. Justin Schultz got some power play time towards the end of their last game against Montreal. I think he was out there with the empty net as well. So I'm not saying go gung ho on Schultz because they're playing him on the third pair with Jack Johnson. If they don't get a ton of power plays, Schultz might only play 13 or 14 minutes or something like that. But it's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah, I don't think I would play Schultz unless I'm playing a bunch of Penguins. So for like that scenario,
I like let's just say I have zero Schultz.
Okay.
I have zero Schultz, one Marino, a couple of Tangs, and a few Petries.
Wonderful. I love it. Another fun game, maybe the most fun game of the day.
The main event.
Yeah, main event, but this is not the hammer. So this is going to open up some late swap stuff. I'm going to have a bunch of lineups probably that start with this game and maybe fade the first couple. And then if you get this one right, you can move around your lineups or, go a little bit more contrarian if you're falling behind after this one. But there's going to be a lot of ownership concentrated in this one. Oilers, Blackhawks, 3.4 implied total for the Oilers, 3 for the Hawks. Mikko, Koskinen, and Crawford. Koskinen is kind of a question mark whether or not they go back to Mike Smith, who lost them the first game basically before it even started. Oilers, they're down 2-1 here. This is an elimination game for McDavid and Draisaitl and Clefbaum and co. I think they might just throw their line combinations out the window at some point during this game. They haven't really done it yet, but they haven't been facing elimination yet. And so I'm a little bit wary about how to treat Edmonton. Obviously, you want a ton of McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins if you're multi-entering. I'm certainly going to have that. But in terms of the even strength lines, you've got Archibald. Ennis is out. He's got a broken leg. Athanasiou moved up with Draisaitl and Yamamoto, but we haven't gotten word about if he's actually going to end up there. And this is obviously not the first game of the slate, so you won't know by lock. Chicago, things are going well for them. Taves, Saad, Kubalik generating a bunch of chances, as is the Doc, DeBrincat, and Kane experiment that they've been rolling out the last couple games here. Lots to like in this one as well. Where are you at for it?
I mean, I can't believe Kirby Doc's price is still 3,500. I mean, like I kind of get it. He's not a shooter, right? I think he only has 2 shots in the first 3 games, but he played 19 minutes, 20 minutes, and 23 minutes or something like that, and he's playing on the top power play unit. Like at 3,500, it's super super hard to leave him off. And I do love that new line, him, DeBrincat, and Kane. DeBrincat and Kane. You forget DeBrincat had a couple 30-goal seasons, 40 goals. I think a 40-goal season, if I'm not mistaken. He just had a bad year this year. Like when DeBrincat and Kane and Strome were going, they were great. When DeBrincat and Kane and Schmaltz a couple years were going, they were great. Who's to say Kirby Dach can't do the same thing to that line? Because he's looked great so far these playoffs as well. So I'm super in on the new Chicago 2. I also love the new Edmonton 2 with Athanasiou up on the second line. Like Athanasiou is a guy that I really like coming into the season, and he didn't play well at all this year. And he looks bigger and faster. It looks like he put on a good 10 pounds of muscle or 15 pounds of muscle or something
faster?
Like that. Yeah,
he's already a blazing.
He was already a demon, but he honestly looked. He looks the same. He looks okay. Let's say the same speed, but he looks 10 pounds bigger.
Okay. Yeah,
and
I haven't watched him a lot. So,
yeah, he just looks like a different player. And like I hate I hate basing everything off observations from the first handful of games, but like it's either do that or go off of hockey stats from 5 months ago. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So what are you going to base yourself on? And I just like the way Athanasiou was looked in the first few games, and he looked really good on that line when he jumped up. So I'm going to have a fair bit of Edmonton too. I think Draisaitl is my highest owned player on this slate today. I don't have as much McDavid. I have less McDavid and Nugent Hopkins than I do Draisaitl and Yamamoto. But for me, out of this game, it's Chicago 2. I mean, there's a lot out of this game. I think I have Chicago 2 lineups. I have Edmonton 2 lineups. I have Edmonton power play lineups, and I have game stack lineups. I just don't see any I don't see any reason to avoid this game by any stretch. As far as the matchups go, like, do matchups really matter in this game?
No.
I think they matter a lot in Montreal, Pittsburgh, and Vancouver, Minnesota, but for this one, I don't think so. So I don't think looking at matchups is really worth it. If you want to look on the blue line, I think Connor Murphy's starting to get a little bit too expensive. He's been sitting in the 4K range pretty much all playoffs. He's up at 4,600 now, just a little bit below Duncan Keith. If you're going to go for that type of player, like a guy who's not going to get huge power play minutes or something like that, I'd rather just drop down to Calvin DeHaan. I think he's looked really good, and he's a shot blocking machine. I think he's got like 7 or 8 blocks through 3 games already. So, the 3 block bonus is well in range for Calvin DeHaan, who's under 4K. So that's kind of where I'm going. Like, I have a lot of this game: Edmonton 2, Shy 2, Edmonton power play, and a game stack.
Yeah, just tons of fantasy goodness here, DFS goodness.
It's
Uh,
just the thing that throws me off is I don't have any full Edmonton 1 stacks. Like, Josh Archibald stayed there the whole last game, but I think he took 2 minor penalties, and uh, I can't imagine his leash is very long because nobody's leash is long on that top line.
yeah. So how I'm probably treating this game is, well, first of all, gonna have a ton of it, um, and then I'll kind of figure out the rest of my lineups later. Right now, if the slate started, I would have Draisaitl as my my highest owned forward, but would have 15, 20, 25% of McDavid. Somewhere in there, it's going to be. And then, like McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, I'll have some mini stacks. I'll have some Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Clefbaum with a punt third line, maybe that Montreal third line. Wink, wink. Clefbaum is 6K. You could argue that he's the number 1 defenseman on the slate. I think pretty easily. He played 27 plus minutes last game. That didn't go to OT. Top power play duties with the Edmonton power play, which has been the best in the NHL. Going back 5 months ago. It's just basically what it comes down to for me is, how do you want to treat Athanasiou up there? Is he going to stick? Are you comfortable stacking even strength lines? And I think I'd be more comfortable stacking the Draisaitl, Athanasiou, Yamamoto line. Maybe you get a low end combo. People don't know he's moved up there. And then Archibald, like, I don't know. Whatever Archibald I get is probably too much. And I usually play too much of these third fiddle guys.
Yeah,
But
and just one other thing I wanted to bring up, speaking of like third fiddle guys, is Alex Chason. I was looking at his ownership from the last game, and he was at like 8-9%, which, like, I like playing 20% Chason when he's 1 or 2%. Once he starts getting close to double digits, then he pretty much loses his value. Like, his only value is if a puck goes in off of him on the power play. That's what has to happen for him to get his value. Like, he's not going to score on the 4th line at heat strength. Like, come on.
yeah,
So I think I have 1 chase on today, and that's it. It's just he's starting to get too popular for me.
I think just full power play stacks is what I would have him in, because he gets the power play one. You hope that they score 3 goals and McDavid throws one off the skate or something and it goes in the net. Josh Harris says, leave Josh off your Josh stacks. There you go. So you got your Edmonton Josh stack. You play the 5 good forwards: Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Athanasiou, McDavid, and Nugent Hopkins. And then you play a defenseman, whether it's Bear or Clefbaum. And there you go. You got your Joshless Josh Stack. Blackhawks. I mean, I think there's a chance that there's a huge discrepancy between the Doc, DeBrincat, Kane line in terms of ownership, and then the Taves, Kubalik, and Saad line. And I don't have them being that different. Give the slight lean to Chicago too, but if Chicago 1's just going to go under own, I mean, we saw what they could do in the first game of the series. So I like both Chicago lines. I think there's a pretty good chance that I'm higher on, I'm above the field on this Tays line, and then a little bit below where the Doc, Kane, and DeBrincat line comes in. But hard not to like both of them based on how this series has gone. If you watch hockey, if you like wide open hockey, this is the game for you. And just
if you want 1980s hockey in the 2020s, boy, do we have the game for you.
This game rocks. If you're playing Blackhawks stacks, I think throwing in Crawford in there is probably a pretty decent idea at 7,200. Winnable game, and it is a high total, so people will try to avoid him, I'm sure. But if he wins this game, even if he gives up 3 goals, he's probably getting that 35 save bonus, plus the win on top of that, and you got your Blackhawks stack too. So this game rocks. All these games do, but go Oilers, I guess, is what I'm rooting for. I want to see another game after this one.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I want one more of these.
Maple Leafs and Blue Jackets, 3 implied total for the Leafs, 2.4 for the Jackets. Freddie Anderson, and not going to be Korpisalo. It's going to be Merzlikins for the Blue Jackets. He came into the game. That was last night. This is back-to-back here. All the days still running together. It's going to be Merzlikins against Toronto here. He's going to get the full game this time. Blue Jackets, big comeback win last night, down 3-1 going into the third. Scored a couple goals, scored an OT. This was a really fun one. Do you expect any changes on the Leafs side here?
Not really. I mean, they've been fairly stubborn with their lineups. I don't see why they would change anything now. Maybe I think the one thing that they should do, honestly, is move Nick Robertson up to that second line and move Mikheyev down. Mikheyev, he started the year really good, or playing really well. Shouldn't say really good. That's just terrible grammar. Started the year playing really well, and then he had that gruesome, forearm injury or whatever it was, and he missed a lot of time. So it's not that he just missed 5 months. He missed, 7 months or something like that, or 8 months of game time. So doesn't really look like he's quite at the same level. Like that Toronto second line, they got throttled in that last game. I'm pretty sure Tavares and Nylander were both under 30% expected goal share. So I hope they move Robertson up, and I think they might, especially, Mikheyev didn't look great last night. Robertson scored the goal. They obviously probably need to change something. So I'm not expecting anything. If one thing does change, I mean, they should fire Cody Ceci into the Atlantic Ocean, but the other thing they should change is put Nick Robertson up on the second line. I'm not too in on Toronto on this slate. Like, I'm going to have some Matthews one-offs like I normally do. I'm probably going to have some punt, CC and Dermott. I don't even know how punty CC is. Punt CC and Dermott for defensemen, but that's about it. Like, Jake Muzzin really matters to this team. He got injured in game 2. Didn't play game 3, will not be in the lineup for game 4. If you look at the team this year with Muzzin on the ice, their expected goals against was like 2.5, or roughly, give or take. Without him, it was up near 2.8. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but you're looking at a 12% increase on average when he's just not on the ice. And now you're moving people into positions where they aren't, like Travis Dermott, like here you go, straight to the second pair or something like that. So, like Riley Ceci is just a god-awful defensive pair. Like, they can transition the puck, but they actually have to get the puck first. So, I don't see Toronto throttling, putting up 5-6 goals on Columbus with the way Columbus has been playing. Columbus has definitely been allowing the shots, but they had good goaltending all year. They've had good goaltending again in these playoffs. I don't know why we'd expect anything different. So I'm fairly out on Toronto. I'm not stacking them anywhere. Like I said, I do have some one-off Matthews. I'm probably going to have a good amount of Robertson and hoping that he gets moved up to the second line. Even if he doesn't, I'm fine with him on the third line as a one-off at his price anyway. Columbus went and had a consistent top six last night, and I think that's important. Torts is a guy that pulls out the old blender fairly often, so that we actually got a full game with a consistent top six. It's nice to see. I'm going back to Dubois and Atkinson. Like Dubois, he's got this reputation for some reason in the league as this great two-way center and good defensive center, et cetera, et cetera. And he's actually better offensively than he is defensively. Like he's a better offensive center than he is a defensive center, and that's not something that's really rare when you get to the NHL. Usually, players are drafted because they're really good offensively, and then they learn the defensive side of the game. So I think Dubois is still getting underrated by a lot of people for what he can bring in the offensive zone. So I'm going back Dubois, Atkinson, mix up Werenski and Jones. Going to have some Merzlikins. Want to know David Savard played over 27 minutes last night with Werenski and Jones near 30-31. So if you want to get a little bit different with your Columbus stacks, like I imagine Jones and Werenski are both going to have a decent amount of ownership on them. Savard would probably be the pivot guy for me.
Love it. Yeah. Interesting to point out the Columbus lines last night. So they're a little bit skewed from what we see on the screen here. These will get updated on the lineup builder, hopefully, very soon. It was Jenner, Foligno, and Nyquist, and they were getting the shutdown minutes against Matthews. So I actually like that line. It's listed as a third line, right, on the lineup sites, and it's listed as third line on FC. So I'm treating that like the second line. That is the second line, and then Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, and Foudy, I think, was the third line. We know what to do with Wenberg. I don't want to trash him too much and lock in
Don't put that into
multi-goal.
the universe.
Yeah, I don't want to lock in the multi-goal performance here from Wenberg. So we'll just say that he's got other strengths besides being good DFS play. Top line for Columbus, like they looked really good. And then when I was watching the game, and then the stats backed it up. I think they had like 30 shot attempts through the game. Now it was basically a 4-period game. Matthews' line was okay at generating offense. So that's the one I think I prefer here in the same matchups. Although I don't think the Jenner, Foligno, Nyquist line is going to be a pushover for them. So kind of lukewarm on the Leafs. Our top stack tool does really like them, though. So if you like using that tool, you're probably going to end up with some Leafs 1 stacks, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. I just don't see myself matching the field on anything on the Toronto side, except maybe some Justin Holl or Dermott or CC. Got a couple punt options over there. And I like the top 6 again for the Blue Jackets. Josh brings up an interesting concern. He says Torts is just going to grind the pace of this game to a halt. Any concern for you there?
I mean, they can try to do that, but I think Toronto kind of showed last night that they still can get through them. And like I said, without Muzzin, this team gives up a lot more, and again that pushes everybody up the pecking order. So I think this is a back-to-back game. You know, we have to remember that, and it's not a typical back-to-back. Like teams that often play back-to-backs, you know, maybe it'll be a Saturday afternoon and then Sunday night, or you know, at least it's a night game without, you know, a lengthy overtime or something like that. Like these teams, you know, Toronto and Columbus are going to have 20 hours between the end of the game last night and the start of the game today. And the thing that typically goes when players are tired is defense first. You know, hockey players want to score. You know, if they're tired, they're not thinking, "Oh my God, I got to defend." They're thinking, "Oh my God, I need to score." So I think we're going to see a high pace and maybe a little bit of sloppy hockey in this one. That's why I'm not shying away from the Leafs completely. I think, you know, Matthews could easily pop a couple goals in a sloppy game like this. So I'm not too afraid about Torts shutting things down, because I think he knows, you know, you can't bank on holding the Leafs to 1 or 2 goals. I think he knows that. I hope he knows that.
JR says Elvis with Columbus 1 ? Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. So we've got Korpisalo. This again, we'll get updated. before if you want to use the lineup builder. Before we get to the last game on the slate, the late night hammer back to Vancouver and Minnesota for the 10:45 Eastern game, 9:45 my time. Going to be another late night, hopefully sweating some pretty good lineups. I just want to point out there, SuperDraft has some contests. They're the sponsor of the show. Please go support them if you're interested in playing at another site, just getting some more volume down. They've got some NHL tournaments going on today. They're not locking at the same time as DK and FanDuel, so really no excuse not to go and play some. I've had some fun playing on SuperDraft. I think the contests are much softer than DraftKings and FanDuel for NHL, and for a lot of other sports. You've got MMA, NASCAR, NBA. And I've played MLB and MMA over there too, and it's a little bit different because you don't have to worry about salary. You can play whoever you want, but you get rewarded for playing some sleeper picks, which is really nice when you're grinding through the entire slate and trying to look at everything that's happened so far, especially for NHL in these playoffs. If you want to sign up on SuperDraft and you haven't yet, and you deposit $20 or more, you get $10 free with promo code Awesemo10. So there you go. You'd be up to $30. If you deposit $100, you would get $20 free in SuperDraft cash. So lots of stuff going on there. MMA, again, NASCAR, MLB. They've got NBA as well. So go support SuperDraft. All right. Last game of the slate. Vancouver, Minnesota, 2.7 implied total for the Canucks, 2.8 for the Wild. Jacob Markstrom and Stalock, possibly Dubnyk, going for the Wild. We're not going to know this one. If you're worried about it, let's see what DraftKings has for the price differences. Do you know off the top of your head if Dubnyk and Stalock are priced the same? They've been better at doing that the last couple days after the first game.
Yeah, they're the same price.
Okay, so they're the same price on DK. They're probably not on FanDuel. So I would just put in the more expensive one and then just make sure you can remember to swap, or you're going to be up late enough to swap. I guess it is Friday, so you got to be up late enough.
You know what I did, and I'm just going to say this is aside from everything else, is I was getting bad for uploading the wrong CSV when I got into Counter-Strike DFS. So I have two Post-it notes just under my monitor, one that says, did you upload the right CSV? And the other one, goalie scratches, ? And it's right there all day, every day. I can't help but notice it. I have not uploaded the wrong CSV or not gotten a goalie or scratch wrong yet.
All right. Okay. I thought you were gonna say, and you still forgot it, but
no, not that bad.
All right. Because I've almost forgot. There's a lot of stuff going on.
I'm just saying, like, there's a lot going on. People forget things really easily. It's just a couple Post-it notes that can honestly save you hundreds or thousands of dollars.
Yeah. We've all heard stories about like guys with legit zeros in their lineup, guys that aren't even playing or weren't going to play, or you got your dummy lineup in there. So let's try not to have that. And even if I'm having a good slate, I don't want someone else to get a zero. Like, I mean, if they get a zero, fine, they play the game. But like, I don't want to see people losing money because they forget stuff. Anyway, yeah. So just don't do that. Play the guys that are actually playing. It could be March. Go ahead.
Just give yourself little reminders. I'm saying it works, man. It really works.
Set an alarm on your phone. That's another one that I've.
So many alarms.
Yeah, just stagger them on the start times every hour today. Just set the alarm on the phone. Hey, you got guys that are playing line combos, whatever it is.
Whatever it takes, man. Yeah. Whatever it takes.
So it's going to be Markstrom for Vancouver. I think we're pretty certain about that. These teams did play yesterday, but Vancouver is up 2-1 in the series. I doubt they're going to want to change anything after winning the last two. What do we got in this game? I mean, I don't have a ton of confidence that the Wild are going to keep their lines together. I think they like the Eriksson, Foligno, and Greenway line as the shutdown line, so that's actually the one I'm most confident sticks together, and they're going to get the Pettersson, Miller, Besser line. Now, they've gone up against they went up against them yesterday. They didn't do a bad job or anything, but I thought there was an error on Natural Stat Trick. They only played 32 and a half or maybe 33 minutes at 5-on-5 yesterday. They were just penalty after penalty after penalty.
There's 13 power plays in the game yesterday. Yeah. I think they're so
So we don't have much of a sample, and it's been that way basically the whole series from the first game on. 32 times shorthanded in this series between these two teams. I don't know what to do with this game. It's not like it's been super high scoring or anything. The power plays haven't been fantastic on either side. Um, what are you doing here in the late night hammer?
I am mostly out on Vancouver too because, like you
Wait,
said,
Vancouver 2, the
oh,
Pedersen line?
sorry, yeah,
Got
Vancouver
it.
won. I'm
Same
just
thing.
looking at my
Yeah,
own
yeah.
sheet. I'm talking about the Pedersen Miller line. Is like you said, they do like that Eriksson, Greenway, Foligno line. They use it as a shutdown line, and it was probably the best shutdown line in hockey this year. And
Super
that's
good.
not hyperbole or an exaggeration. Their expected goals against per 60 this year together as a line was 0.9. Like that's good for a game where you play 15 minutes, like, 20 minutes or
Yeah.
something like that, 20 or 25 minutes for a defenseman. That'd be good
Mhm.
for a defenseman for a game. That's what they averaged every 60 minutes. It's just insane how good, just they don't allow anything near the net and they clog up the middle so well that the only way, Vancouver can really get to them when that line's on the ice is just crashing the net. And that's not something that particular line is really known for. So I'm out on the Pedersen Miller Besser line. I have 0% today. If that bites me, so be it. I just don't. I'm just going by matchups, and I think it's a terrible matchup for them. I do have some Horvat and Pearson. Not a lot. I think I'm 1 out of 20 lineups or 2 out of 20 lineups or something like that. Just as a little duo, Pearson. He's the next man up on the power play. If there's an empty net situation, he'll be on the ice. So I think there's some extra bonus offensive situations that could occur through this game for him. But that's pretty much it from Vancouver. I'm not huge on their side. I'll be back in the Markstrom train again because I think Minnesota could kind of do the same thing that they did yesterday. They are a good team. They just don't have a lot of stars. That's
Yeah.
the problem. They don't have a lot of guys you can say, go get me a goal. They have Fiala, and that's it. So I'm in on Markstrom. I'm in on Horvat as a one-off, maybe some Horvat Pearson as a two-man. I'm in on the Minnesota side in this game again. I'm back. I'm going back to the top line again. Stahl, Fiala, Parise. They're gonna just now that they can dictate. Now that they're dictating matchups, you look at the numbers yesterday. You look at the numbers all season. When Minnesota's at home, and that third line can eat the top line from the opposing team, Fiala and Stahl just run wild on the depth. So Fiala, Stahl, Parise, love him again here today. If you're worried about lineups changing, Parise would be the guy I would leave off. I don't think they're breaking up Stahl, Fiala at any
Agreed.
point. So that's what I would leave together. One thing I want to note about the game yesterday, and it's pretty important, is that Ryan Suter didn't play the final 7 minutes. Matt Dumba took a spot both on the top pair and the top power play, if I'm not mistaken, at least on the top power
Yeah.
play. And he's 4,400. So Matt Dumba is one of my favorite defense plays on the entire slate today. I'm going to have quite a bit of him. I do like the Galchenyuk, Cunnin, Zuccarello line.
Hmm.
Like they didn't look bad. Like Galchenyuk's another guy that it looks like he used the 5 month pause to his benefit because he looked like AHL quality in the first 3 or 4 months of the season. Like there's a reason why he was either fourth line, sometimes scratch for Minnesota, and now he's up to what you could effectively call the second line for them. This isn't a team that would give Galchenyuk second line minutes just because he's a former first round pick with 30 goals 3 years ago. They'd have no problem sending him to the press box if he wasn't playing well. The reason he's on the second line is because he is playing well at this time. Now, it's one of those lines where I'm not going to go hog wild. Maybe a 2-man stack in 5 or 10% of my lineups. That's about it. Mostly in on Minnesota 1 and Dumba on this game. I think it's just a great matchup again for them, and I think it's a terrible matchup for the Pedersen line for Vancouver.
I'm right there with you on Minnesota 1 and Dumba. So glad you pointed out the Suter thing. I missed that off the top of the show. But I remember the announcers talking about it yesterday. So if you want to play Suter, I suppose you could leave him in and just swap down to Dumba
Yeah,
at
that's
game
that's
time.
the thing. That's what makes it easy, right? Is
Yeah.
that if you're worried about Suter staying in and playing PP1, because it, you know, it's the playoffs for them. If Suter's anywhere close to able to play, he'll probably be in the lineup. So it's just an easy swap to have Suter, and then if you need to go down to Dumba, you can.
Yeah. I mean, I like Dumba better, I think, straight up for
Yeah, yeah.
$4,400. Like, he's more the one-off guy anyways for Minnesota when he's not on the top power play.
Yeah.
Fiala missed the net a bunch of times yesterday. He had some good chances, and he was just off. And
I mean, you can't score 2 goals every game, right?
Right.
If he could be the best goal scorer that the world has ever seen.
Yeah, maybe he's Wayne Gretzky or McDavid in the Chicago series or something. But yeah, they're fully correlated on the top power play. You mentioned they're not going to get the tough matchup against Pedersen, JT Miller, and Besser.
No, in fact, I want to point out that they go out of their way to play them against third and fourth lines, and they did that all year. And if you want to say that's the reason for Fiala's success, that's fine. I don't really care because that's the case of the matchup today. They're going to be playing third and fourth lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks great for me for Minnesota. One, I don't really see a reason to get off them. The ownership looks in check. Although, like, I want to point out, we just like whiffed the ownership projections. I think we had them at like 7 or 8% yesterday. They somehow came in at like 20. Maybe that happens again here. They are pretty cheap. Maybe people are soured on them.
Yeah, I just like, this is anecdotal on my part. I haven't looked at it, too closely. It seems a lot of people are reacting to what happened the game before. Because I remember when Forsberg went off in game 1 for Nashville, he was like 25% the next day, while Johansson and Arvidsson were like 11 or 12%. And then you look at the same thing. Fiala scored 2 goals in the final 3 minutes of game 2, I believe it was. And then game 3, his ownership basically doubles. So it seems like people are really reacting. I mean, I shouldn't say it seems because that's a generalization, but just a couple instances I've seen where people have reacted. And obviously a lot of people have reacted very severely to what happened just the game before.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're going with kind of that logic, which I think is good logic, it kind of matches up. You might see some increased ownership on like Vancouver, the Pedersen line, because they had a good performance outside of JT Miller's goose egg. Thanks, JT. And then Hughes, who was 5K, he's not usually a guy I like to one off. He would be a guy I would play with.
I thought of you when he got his 3rd assist because I remember you always saying that he's never a guy that you want off.
And he just doesn't shoot enough.
I think he got 3 even strength assists yesterday. So,
good times. Quinn Hughes 5K. I did have some because I had some full Vancouver Pedersen line stacks with him because he matches up on the power play. And looking back on it, I probably had way too much Vancouver yesterday for the matchup that I knew was going to take place with the Eriksson Ek line, and they didn't do great at 5-on-5. So, Pedersen line is a great line, but this is not a good matchup at all for them. So if they're going to be owned at all, then
honestly, at least the forward matchup might be the worst matchup in the entire league. That's not hyperbole.
Yeah. At the same rate, we talked about power plays. Like, if they're going to have 7 opportunities tonight, that's probably okay.
That's the thing that kind of gives me pause on having no Pedersen, but at the same time, like, I just hate having to rely on power play production for a guy that's 6 or 7K or something like that. You know what I mean?
100%.
If it's Chase on and he's 2,800, I don't care if I'm relying on power play production. But if he's $7,000 or 6,500 or whatever, then that changes the equation.
Yeah, man. All right, I think that's gonna do it for the slate. 5 games. We went just under an hour. Perfect timing. Other stuff. Oh, do you have something?
Okay. I don't know if we mentioned Tristan Jarry was starting for Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I had that. Okay. It's just that makes a difference. I think he's better than Murray, but I don't think the gap is as big as people make it out to be. So
we've got a bunch of other shows coming up today. If you're looking to watch some strategy for, let's see, NASCAR's tomorrow. I know that. We've got NBA live before lock. We've got MLB live before lock. We've got UFC was last night. They'll have a live before lock tomorrow. There will be a new. We'll probably have an NHL show tomorrow morning, assuming we can sneak that in, and then everything throughout the weekend, MLB on Sunday. So You're not going to be cheated on free content. If you want to sign up for premium NHL, promo code NHL is back. We'll give you 50% off your first month. You'll get projections, ownership projections, the top stack tool, all the tools we referred to, including the one on your screen, the lineup builder. You can export directly from there for DraftKings and FanDuel. Shout out to SuperDraft for sponsoring the show. Let's go fill up their NHL contests for today. Show them some love, and we'll see you guys back tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't wait. Good luck, everyone.